Hi, my name is Lee. There's a lot of nonsense being spread around online about the Noahide covenant. At this point, there is more bad data and paranoia than proper research available. This is a response to the misinformation campaign and those who buy into it. I will try to make it as quick as possible. So one of the things we'll hear most is the Noahide covenant is not in the Bible. Here is Genesis 6, verse 18. And I will set up my covenant with you, and you shall come into the ark, you and your sons, and your wife, and your sons' wives with you. And here is after the flood in Genesis 9, verse 9 through 17. God said to Noah and his sons with him, Behold, I am setting up my covenant with you and with your seed after you, and every living creature. And I will establish my covenant with you, and never again will all flesh be cut off by the floodwaters. And God said, This is the sign of the covenant which I am placing between me and between you, and between every living soul that is with you, for everlasting generations. Which means forever. My rainbow I have placed in the cloud, and it shall be for a sign of a covenant between myself and the earth. And it shall come to pass, when I cause clouds to come upon the earth, that the rainbow will appear in the cloud. And I will remember my covenant which is between me and between you, and between every living creature among all flesh. And the water will no longer become a flood to destroy all flesh. And the rainbow shall be in the cloud, and I will see it, to remember the everlasting covenant between God and between every living creature among all flesh which is on the earth. And God said to Noah, This is the sign of the covenant that I have set up between myself and between all flesh that is on the earth. Now think about this question. If the Noahide laws didn't exist or were not in effect, why would God destroy Sodom and Gomorrah? What crimes were they committing if there were no laws known to man? The answer is that they were aware of the 7 Noahide laws, but perverted their court system. This on top of their noted sexual immorality. The Noahide laws dictate that we establish and maintain proper courts of justice. Judges are not allowed to take a bribe, for instance. And this is what we strive for today. So what about this exchange between Lot and the people of the city of Sodom? Here we have Genesis 19, 1 through 7. And the 2 angels came to Sodom in the evening, and Lot was sitting in the gate of Sodom. And Lot saw and arose toward them, and he prostrated himself on his face to the ground. And he said, Behold now, my lords, please turn to your servant's house, and stay overnight, and wash your feet, and you shall arise early, and go on your way. And they said, No, but we will stay overnight in the street. And he urged them strongly, and they turned into him, and he came into his house. And he made a feast, and he baked unleavened cakes, and they ate. So he urged them strongly against staying outside, and you'll see why. When they had not yet retired, and the people of the city, the people of Sodom, surrounded the house, both young and old, the entire populace from every end of the city, and they called to Lot and said to him, Where are the men who came to you tonight? Bring them out to us, and let us be intimate with them. And Lot came out to them to the entrance, and he shut the door behind him. And he said, My brethren, please do not do evil. This line by Lot is in many ways the bottom line of the 7 laws of Noah. We just have to be careful to avoid evil. And verse 9, but they said, Back away. And they said, This one came to sojourn, and he is judging. So they had a concept of court and judges, but it was twisted. The thing that the people of the city wanted to do was against the Noahide laws. And they had a law or a custom in Sodom that if you passed through, or if you were an outsider and you came to them, that they would have their way with anyone who is new to the city. Another thing we'll hear is only in the Talmud, that that you can only find this stuff in the Talmud, and then of course there are those who demonize the Talmud, and that's a whole other issue. But the details of the 7 categories of law are found in the Talmud. This is not unusual. The details of the 10 commandments, or the 613 laws that it breaks down into, are also only found in the Talmud. Like, for example, the Shabbat, or the Sabbath, just says you shall do no work. So what counts as work? Is making food work? Starting a fire? When does it start and end? So the fine details are not in the Bible. They're in the Talmud, which is just the oral law. So Noahides want to behead everyone. This is something that we hear often in these types of videos or blogs. This comes from a source about all crimes by non-Jews being worthy of death. But it must be considered in context, especially if you're not familiar with the text. It is a long discussion with various details and opinions. The death penalty is there to remind us of the seriousness of the offense, but the death penalty was not used often, and this must be stressed. Like, here's a source to give you an idea. The Mishnah, Makot 7a, declares that a court which imposes the death penalty once in 7 years is destructive or too harsh. Rabbi Eliezer ben Azariah applies this epithet to a court which imposes the death penalty but once in 70 years. So once in 70 years is too much. The laws of evidence and the mode of examination to which witnesses were subjected made it difficult to secure a conviction in the vast majority of cases. The court was given discretion to subject witnesses to particularly rigorous examination with regard to the most trivial details of matters irrelevant to the substance of their testimony. The witnesses were separated from one another, and each was questioned in detail. Given the faulty nature of human memory, it is not at all difficult to evoke inconsistencies and discrepancies in the testimony of various witnesses. Contradictory statements by witnesses, even with regard to such ancillary matters as the color of the garment worn by the accused or the number of buttons on a cloak, constituted sufficient reason for exclusion of their testimony. Rabbi Tarfon and Rabbi Akiva volunteered the statement, "If we had been members of the Sanhedrin, no man would have ever been put to death." Giving examples, they indicated that they would have demanded testimony so specific as to be unobtainable. Rabbi Shimon ben Gamliel, in stating his opposition to such a policy, predicates his view upon the fear that were capital punishment to be abolished, bloodshed might become rampant. And there's your source. You can look this up on Sefaria.org, which is an amazing resource. You can find anything that you want to know about any verse in the Bible. There will be tons of commentaries and references. Sefaria.org. Check it out if you're into any type of Bible study. Even today, putting a murderer to death is rare because it is not something to be taken lightly. So even today, it's something that doesn't happen often, and for a good reason. So another thing you'll see or hear in these videos or comments or blogs is New World Order conspiracy theories connected to the 7 laws. This is another fear tactic used to keep people in an excited, anxious, or frantic state of consciousness. And it gets a lot of views on YouTube. The whole idea exists largely because noachite can be found in the founding documents of Freemasonry, referring to Noah, his sons, and their children. This does not prove anything other than they hold Genesis and the Torah in high regard, like most of the rest of the world. One can find references to the Torah and the Noahide covenant in all sorts of unlikely places because they have been known for millennia. I came across this example in a 300-year-old alchemy text, for instance. And here you can see Noah's Ark, the dove and the olive branch. This bird was also set out, and there are stories about this lion that you see here on the ark. One story was that the lion attacked Noah after the flood, which is why he planted a vineyard and got drunk. And here is the next page of the same manuscript. You see the rainbow here, and then some verses, and then also a rainbow in this vessel. We'll take a closer look, and you'll see that the verses are actually from Genesis 9. And this is probably from the Vulgate, but Genesis 9 and the establishment of the Noahide covenant. The credit for these images, if you're into old rare books and manuscripts, check out Greg Marcus, a friend of mine on Facebook, and it doesn't matter, he's got everything in a very impressive digital library. If you're into mystical texts from Jewish background, Christian, Muslim, doesn't matter, any of the Asian religions, check him out. It's a very impressive library, one of the best in the world. Note the rainbow in the two verses from Genesis 9 where the covenant with Noah was established after the flood. So another thing we'll hear is they want to establish one world religion, whoever they are. Usually it's the Jews. The Noahide laws are not a religion. They represent an everlasting, eternal covenant. These laws are the foundation of international law to this day. So, when it says in Genesis 9, an everlasting, eternal covenant, we can see with our eyes that these laws are still in effect today. And they are also the foundation of Judaism, Christianity, and Islam. None of us are permitted to steal, murder, commit adultery, abuse animals, blaspheme, or worship idols, no matter what religion. And what kind of religion would say it's okay to do these things anyway? The 7 laws are something most religious and agnostic people can agree with. Even atheists think it's stupid to worship idols. If everyone obeyed the 7 laws, would we have world peace? And is it a good blueprint if that's the goal? Another thing you might hear is that the Noahides want to execute Christians. This is an obvious fear tactic used to keep you from looking into anything for yourself. First, there is the concept of shituf, or partnership, and there are opinions that say that this type of belief is permitted. So check into it. Worshipping God and some other entity alongside God may be allowed, though many people who call themselves Noahides prefer to stick with strict monotheism. Christians think the Torah is from God. They believe in God. There are some issues, but for the most part, people in the world are keeping the 7 laws these days. Here's a question for Christians who are against the Noahide laws. Would a person who takes on the 7 laws and is careful to keep them, would that person make a good neighbor and friend? Would that be a person that you'd want in the community? Another thing you'll hear is, we follow the 10 Commandments only. Well, that's not exactly true. You follow the 7 laws which are reiterated by God through Moses at Sinai. The 7 are contained in the 10, and they were repeated or reiterated or given an extra stamp by God through Moses at Sinai. Part of the 10 Commandments are the laws of the Sabbath day. Unless you are an observant Jew, you probably don't keep all the Sabbath laws or the dietary laws. So you probably still eat pork or mix meat and milk. it's very unlikely that you keep all the Sabbath laws or the dietary laws, so you can't say that you're keeping the 10 Commandments. However, you can say that you're keeping the 7. And there are, among those 613, many that the nations have taken on. Another thing you'll hear is Noahides are quasi-Jews. We both believe in God. We both believe God is one. We both live by laws of the Torah. The Noahide laws were in effect way before the giving of the Torah, though, or the giving of the 10 Commandments in Exodus 20. And actually, that portion of the Torah where the Torah was given, or the 10 Commandments at Sinai, that Torah portion is named after a non-Jew, Jethro, Moses' father-in-law, who definitely knew of the 7 laws. Noahides were ethical monotheists, believers in law and justice and one God during the times recorded in Genesis, which is before the giving of the Torah. Then what are the Noahide laws? Simply put, they're 7 categories of law that make up the everlasting, eternal covenant God made with Noah for every single person. The original covenant of ethical monotheism. Do not do to others that which you would hate. And every person can understand the value of this ethic, and even if you aren't a Noahide, you likely follow the Noahide covenant most of the time in your daily life. These laws are a guideline for how to treat each other. Not only are they laws for nations to follow, but they are also ancient instructions for personal self-improvement. An honest person can use the 7 categories to pinpoint where he or she may be coming up a bit short and then choose to work on that aspect of themselves. Notice that there are many covenants in the Bible. This is the first one recorded. But none of the other covenants that came after say that you can break any of the 7 laws of Noah. So in any of the covenants that came after, none of them say, well, now it's okay to break any of the 7 laws. The 7 laws of Noah are the foundation of every single covenant in the Bible. Examples of non-Jewish judges, Torah scholars, and scribes via Jethro, Moses' father-in-law, so the father of his wife, Ziphrah, can be found in 1 Chronicles 2:55. The families of scholars who dwelt with Yabets, and Yabets is, you may recognize some of you from the very popular book, The Prayer of Yabets. And this is also a place and a person. And they are the Canaanites who were descended from Hamath, the father of the house of Rechab. And the house of Rechab is the Rechabites, who you may remember in Jeremiah 35 have a covenant with God of their own because they abstained from wine. They abstained from drinking wine. And they are Canaanites. Here's what the sources say about them. In reward for Jethro telling his daughters, call him that he may eat bread, Exodus 2:20, inviting Moses to join them for a meal, Jethro's descendants were privileged and sat as scribes in session with the Sanhedrin in the chamber of hewn stone. So they sat in the grand court. That line of Canaanites and Rechabites produced the all-time great judges Shemaiah and Abtalion. These guys were experts in the 7 categories of law that make up the Noahide laws, and they were hanging out and grafted into greater Israel. In conclusion, there are people who fear God and obey his original, everlasting, eternal covenant, the 7 laws of Noah, from the beginning of the Bible to the very end. These laws are clearly still in effect to this day. If you are interested in some influential non-Jews who did work on the 7 laws, I encourage you to look up John Selden. John Selden, this is from his Wikipedia, 1584 to 1654, was an English jurist, a scholar of England's ancient laws and constitution, and scholar of Jewish law. He was known as a polymath. John Milton hailed Selden in 1644 as the chief of learned men reputed in this land. And Selden's work heavily influenced the founders of the United States and Canada. Here is a front cover of a 1,000-plus page manuscript he published on the Noahide laws in 1640. So this guy heavily influenced the founders of North America and English law, and he has this massive manuscript on the 7 laws of Noah. Look up John Selden. And here we see in Hebrew, mitzvot bnai noach. So the laws or the mitzvot or the divine laws or the obligations of the children of Noah. So the Noahide laws. The non-Jew in the Bible is a massive topic. If you are interested in getting to the bottom line of the entire religious spectrum, or if you want to study the ancient roots of the Abrahamic faiths, take some time to check out the Noahide laws without any bias. I am happy to discuss the 7 laws with anyone. If you are interested, leave a comment, look me up on Messenger, or you can email me or hate mail me at leapatton@gmail.com. Thank you very much.